Welcome back, Pillow Frighters. I'm Kay.
And I'm Emma, and we're two out of your three besties bringing you all things horror.
Today, we have with us two of the masterminds behind Southern California's most original haunted attraction, Knott's Scary Farm. While other events drop obscene amounts of money on buying up big-name IPs, these gentlemen work tirelessly to create wholly unique and original visions to terrify your scream season. Let's welcome Daniel Miller and Gus Krueger.
Hi.
Hello there.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We start every interview with a couple of questions we ask everyone. What is the first horror movie you remember ever seeing? And which is the first horror movie that ever scared you?
Probably most definitely for me, it was Halloween. And it was before my time to see it actually in the movies for the first time. So I think Halloween 2 was the first film I saw actually in the movie theater. Scary. And I remember Friday the 13th as well as my brother's birthday. He was like 13 and I was like, 11 or something. Yeah, so Halloween definitely is the one that really got me into horror. My mom was a huge horror fan. She loved it. Would take us all the time to see, everything. So that period in the 80s, my brothers and I just loved horror. So big, huge fan.
Wow. For me, probably, I can't remember exactly, but it was either Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is not technically horror, but it fits the genre, right?
Oh, for us theater kids, it's horror.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I saw that on a bootleg VHS when I was about 10. So that was fun. And then that and Evil Dead was the first two that I can remember. Yeah, so just perfectly normal start. But I don't remember ever really getting scared though. It was more like, this is cool, and just watching and taking it in. I think the things that scared me were like, you're all gonna die in nuclear war. Well, that sounds hideous. So like these boogeymen in the woods are like, yeah, that's not so bad.
So I do have a little amendment to that. My dad never took me to horror films. He thought it would be too freaky. So he knew that we loved horror films. He decided at one point to take us to Amityville Horror. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fun. And then all the way to it, everyone kept on telling me, oh, it's real. It's real.
Oh.
And that scarred me. So I basically was at a drive-in. I just hid it under a pillow. I couldn't see it. I just remember this pig floating in the window, Jody, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And it just freaked me out. That was the first one I was really terrified of.
I feel like that movie still scares me as an adult.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just put it on and when they're like, get out, it actually gets under your skin. So yeah. I see that.
Another, fun, silly question. Do you have a first horror crush?
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh man, not really. I mean, can I come back to it?
Yeah.
He could go down his
We just
list.
did a Elvira art show. And I just remember as a kid watching Elvira and just kind of being totally enamored with her. And now I work with her, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my upbringing was kind of weird. So my upbringing was a little different because my dad I grew up in a long chain of, he had bookstores and he had adult stores. So it's like, I kind of just wandered around like Buena all the time. So it wasn't like, wow, I'm really attracted to all these women. It was just like, that's just normal. And so I
desensitized.
yeah, kind of, yeah. So that's going to sound great on this. I'll be like, wow, he's really selling the farm. But we had adult bookstores and things as my dad grew up in the book and then moved in the comic business. So it was really, if anything, maybe that's why I was so desensitized to that just kind of weirder adult content. It was just normal. It's just, that's just another thing. So it was more like, yeah, that lady's attractive or whatever, but it wasn't a matter of, oh, this is the one, my hyper fixation on this thing, kind of thing.
Fair.
Just digging my own ditch.
All right, well, let's talk all things Scary Farm, and let's take it from the very top. How did you guys become scenic designer, maze engineers?
You want to start or?
Yours is so much more traditional. You start.
Oh, sure. I went to UC Irvine and I became a theater major. And I actually started my horror journey. They had a maze, like the sci-fi club of UC Irvine. They loved making haunted houses. So every year they would make a haunted house for home. It was this tiny little thing. And I loved being a monster in it. And I kind of got into the creation of it. And I switched majors to theater and to set design. So from that point on, we went to New York University. I got an MFA for that. But actually, between, I took 1 year and I was a monster here. I was in Uncle Ernie's Madhouse, which is sort of a hillbilly thing at the time. Actually, no, it was House of Maniacs. I was Uncle Ernie as a layover character from the Madhouse. So I was a deranged hillbilly. But I really love set design, so I continued at New York University. But one of the first places I applied to 26 years ago was Knott's Berry Farm because I knew about Knott's Scary Farm. And when I heard that the job actually entailed original creations of mazes, I bid in hard. I loved it. So I've been here for 26 years. I've probably created around 26 to 27 mazes that are original and worked on dozens more. But it's a great job. I mean, I every day is a dream come true or nightmare come true. So, yeah.
Yes, mine not nearly as traditional as his. I didn't study scenic design. I studied TV video. So I was like on the path to be an editor, basically working bum jobs here and there. And a buddy of mine kept bugging me to come work at Scary Farm. And I tried 1 year, I auditioned and it was like late in the run and whatever I had wasn't what they were looking for. So like, get out of here. So I was like, whatever. And then a few years later, he said, nah, come do it again. They're not doing any of that stuff again. They need people. I'm like, okay. So I applied and I started working as a seasonal talent like him. My first gig here was as a monster. I was just some random skeleton in Elvira's Nightmares. Cool. So that was the maze I started in. But from there, even though, with the little bit of I had done some theater classes as well, but it was really focusing on that. So I was studying TV and film, and I had been working a little bit with some buddies on an improv show, and I was just doing set design for them. Not set design, but more build, because it wasn't design. It was just, we have trash and I could put it together. So, but from there, the second or third year I was working as a talent here, I got onto the carpentry team and wound up working a season there. And for the next year, I got recruited to work on the props crew, which is the props crew here at Knott's is different than a props crew on like a movie, or it's more like the scenic package, the art direction type, the set decor, as opposed to just hand props. I always like to clarify it because props can be, it's the everything, right? It's the look. So I started doing that. And then I had a couple seasons off. And when I came back, the people running props at the time, they asked me to come back. And, probably within a year and a half of me coming back, I was running the props crew. I just worked hard and I didn't shoot for it, just sort of fell into my lap and I went with it. And then I ran the props crew here, working closely with this guy. And kind of like I said, it's more like we're art directing in his absence when he's not there, at least as far. That's how I looked at it. So he trusted me a ton to help him bring his stuff to life. So, but I ran the props crew for about 5 or 6 years. And I kind of I felt a little complacent. And at the time, one of our designers had left for another park, and there was an opportunity there. There was a maze that didn't have anyone assigned at the time. So I went to the head of entertainment at the time and I said, hey, if nobody's overseeing this maze and you need somebody to just do it, because it's just sort of this prop heavy thing, I'd be happy to just do that because I'm kind of getting antsy doing what I'm doing. And she just looked at me and said, oh, so you want to design, huh? You're designing this sign. And I was like, huh? Okay. It was just like these weird jumbled wagon camp graphics that the guy going out had just sort of thrown in. So I just placed them together and I'm like, how does that look to you? And she goes, oh yeah, that's great. Fine. Thanks. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, we'll talk about what that is. I was like, okay. Just a few days later, basically, she's just, maybe even 2 days. She's, oh yeah, you're going to do, in addition to that, I'm going to have you do the log ride and the mine ride overlays because we're taking talent out and it's going to just be more prop stuff. And the other guys are busy. And I was like, okay. And she said, yeah, just come up with some stuff. Okay. And I was like, okay, so we'll do skeletons over here and ghosts over here and it'll be fun. And I came up with the stuff and did this to her. And then we had another venue at the time that was being moved from inside the park. This was Endgames that was moved backstage. And all I just thought was, man, I don't know how they're going to fit that into a warehouse. And then I literally, a week after I thought that, she's like, oh, hey, I need you to move this into this warehouse. And I was still running the props department at the same time. So it was just kind of like, huh? So I don't know I don't know how I did it, but I managed to survive that season and then got through that season. And she just said, "Oh, by the way, I'm just gonna move you over to or design full time." And it was weird and wild, and it really was just a matter of working hard and doing it for the right reasons and just taking advantage of opportunities. So,
And at that time, that was more the typical way of how.
yeah.
It's actually weird that they actually hired a MFA designer.
Yeah, and honestly, if I came with that story and tried to get my job today, if I didn't have my experience, they'd be like, "Fuck, get out of here." Yeah, but I guess I'm doing okay because I've been doing it for 10 years now. So
That's awesome. It's a
Pretty
real
wild.
trial by fire.
yeah, it just sounds so tiring right now. I couldn't imagine.
Well, this year we've got 2 new mazes, Widows and 8 Fingers 9 Boogeyman.
Yes.
Lovely. Where did these nightmares come from?
Oh,
You want me to go first this time?
yeah,
You want
go
to?
ahead.
Okay. Well, 8 Fingers 9, the Boogeyman, I just had been wanting this idea I probably had about 5 years ago, and it just been kicking around. It went through various iterations and never was really fully fleshed out. It was just sort of like a page in one of my pitches, hey, here's this one. But last year, because, that's our cycle of these things. We start working on it at the end of last year, but it really started to come together in my mind. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create something different and unique for Knott based on grim fairy tales along that train of thought. But I wanted to create our own Boogeyman. I wanted to do a Boogeyman maze because I hadn't ever really done just a primary evil protagonist or antagonist. I guess it depends on your point of view. But I wanted to create our own character. I didn't want to borrow anything. And I wanted to make something that just was strong and creepy and unique to us and could be a lasting legacy character. And really the vibe came from a couple of his things where he had done before with just the Tooth Fairy maze he did and Peter Pumpkin Eater. They were these strong characters that drove the narrative. But like I said, I wanted to create something new. So I really dove into what that is and what I wanted to be. I wanted to take it to colonial times. So when you go into the maze, it's like you're walking into a storybook. And that stylistically, it's not like anything else we have here. It's completely different. I grew up around theme parks and just loved wax museums and things like that. So I kind of wanted that, like you're going through a dark ride type vibe of scenic, where you have tons of murals, but you also have some relief stuff on the walls to break it up, but then a lot of 3D. So it really felt like you're in this weird, vibrant world of a storybook. So that was the push of the maze, and to just tell the story of this poor kid who's abandoned in magic woods and left to die, and he's brought back to life by a kindly spirit, but because of the circumstances of his death and how angry he was and his hunger, he taps into all the negative evil of the woods when he's brought back to life, and he transforms into this monster that is immediately empowered with all of the power of nature in these woods and all of the knowledge of the woods, and he's driven by hunger and revenge to go back to town and take care of business.
Oh,
So
that's dark. I love it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to put together.
So Widows started creating last year. I was just shooting the breeze with a couple of painters. Glow Hara, she's the witch on Ghost Town Streets. The bride on Ghost Town Streets. She's the one with the candle. Her and I were talking about what scares us. And previously that night, I was walking my dog, and it was the time of year when spiders were everywhere, and they were just spinning their spider webs. And I was walking through, and I just got a face full of web, and I hate that feeling. I've read somewhere that was like the number one fear for men is walking through spider webs. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying that
Written by a man who hates spiders.
So she said one of her favorite mazes of old was the Asylum. I designed that several years, and she's always creeped out by hospitals. And she was like, I really also hate like hospices and convalescent homes, just because it's like such a weird reminder of death. And I just had like a little light bulb like pop in my head. Wow, what if we smash those two together? What if we have like spiders and grandmas together, and how would that work? So the name came first, which was Widows. So I was like, ooh, Black Widows and Widows. It's kind of fun, to smash those together. But we came up with this concept of demonic spiders burrowing underground and into a convalescent home, taking over the patient's skin. So like they would go into the grandmother's skin and they would be spiders, but they would be sort of in the bodies of these grandmothers. I thought that would be horribly creepy. Now, I think I said before, I'm a huge horror film fan. I also, right at the time, was seeing a movie called X, which has this extremely creepy scene where Mia Goth, I believe her name is, she's like an elderly, she's made up to be an elderly woman, Pearl, and she's seducing this man. I think he's paralyzed. And it was just this creepy scene where this elderly woman's licking this. And I thought, well, what if part of a sub-story of it is these grandmothers were seducing the victims, so they would have to give birth to a clutch of eggs before the night was out. So half of the maze is inside of a convalescent home. That's pretty hyper-realistic. Sort of I like to put a lot of action into the scenery, so everything tells the story. So the whole thing's kind of been torn apart by these large spiders that are everywhere, trying to burrow into the skins of these grandmothers. And then the second half is in these spider caves. Now, we love to do Easter eggs here. And I also want to do another layer. There's a lot of layers already, but I want to do another layer. We used to have a maze here called Voodoo. So I figured, okay, I'm going to tell this story where one of the voodoo priestesses actually was put into this convalescent home. And it's the same venue, actually. So she was so upset by that she cursed the convalescent home, and she created a portal into this under chamber and invited Arachne, the goddess of spiders, to come up and send her sisters into the convalescent home. So she's the reason that all of these spiders are up there attacking the elderly. And the second half of the maze goes into the hierarchy of the spiders. So there's all kinds of there's a venom pit where they all collect all their venom and they serve it up to the goddess. And there's priestesses, and there's kind of orb weavers who are just sort of the workers. Yeah, it's pretty complex, but in fact, tonight is going to be when the talent sees it for the first time. I have to explain all this, so this is kind of good practice for me.
Happy to help.
You guys got some dark stuff going on. It's like great.
So some of them just play backgammon, and the rest of them do magic spells.
Yes.
Like that's the difference between them, right? But I'm just wondering, like, what's the path that happens in these retirement homes?
Well, one of the things to consider when you're designing mazes is some of the ideas are so far-fetched that it's like, how do you actually make a talent able to do that? So we couldn't hire just elderly patients. We wanted them to move fast. So it was like, okay, that's why the concept of them having a spider inside of them, being able to move jerkily back and forth and move like the spider is kind of important to this. And they can choose because they can kind of go back to their elderly form and then startle out as a spider. So
that's terrible.
Yeah,
it's
new fear
like in a good way, but yeah. Thanks for the new phobias. What goes into building a maze from original concept to execution?
Is this on me?
Yeah. I can start.
You can start.
Trade. This is around a year, maybe even a year and a half process. A lot of times, right now is when we're starting to prepare for next year. So we start with the one-page pitch, which is basically we pitch it in one page. We get all these together, and then we're going to call a meeting, and all of the designers and some of the managers come in, and we just pitch all the original ideas that we can. We already kind of know the places that we're going to replace. So we kind of gear towards that place. We like to do that, especially within the park. We like to match a theme to a theme area. That's why Origins is in, Ghost Town, and sort of Mesmer is in the clown area, as well as Sim Slashers in the kind of the clown boardwalky area. Beyond that, then we get approvals, and then we'll go to our storyboarding. And so we storyboard everything, and we get approvals on those. Ground plan. I'd like to do both at the same time, ground plan and storyboarding. we have basically a quick turnaround where that gets approved, and then we move on to all our elevations, usually around 60, 70 plates of original elevations
I think
go
mine this year was 80.
go into the package, and then usually by January it gets finalized, and then it goes off to production. We also have lists, so every discipline has a list: props, paint, video, not really carpentry, because carpentry is the package, and FX, lighting, costuming.
Yeah.
Did I miss any? I think so.
Everything you see on that design phase of it, basically, the way that we do it is it's crazy because they say we're maze designers, but we literally design every aspect that you see. So we will get help with some things once in a while. Obviously, we ask other people opinion and work, but ultimately we are the creators of these venues, and we literally do it all. Like, we write the scripts for the talent, we write the story of the maze, we Photoshop the storyboards, we draft the entire maze in 3D, and then we create the technical drawings from that, and then we create the paint paperwork from that. So it's a pretty all-encompassing job. The design end of it, we usually say it's about 3 months, but honestly, there's still pickup work that takes us through. So we've been working on these since the start of the year. You got a jump start before I did.
Yeah. My due date was January.
Yeah.
So I had to basically work through Christmas to.
Yeah, and then once we get it all there, it all goes through. All the paperwork gets vetted through proper approvals. They do all their budgeting process, and then they just start building the thing. We do have the crafts that build it. We have a great carpentry team that goes in and does it. Obviously, and this is all done in house. Like, everything that we have here is done by people that work on our production teams here. But yeah,
which is fairly unusual. I don't know of any other park that does that. Right? They mostly go outsource all the construction and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's one of our secret sauces. Is like, it keeps it super unique, because you'll rarely see a store-bought product in the maze. Sometimes you will, obviously, because it's just money-wise, it's easier.
What I'll say is you'll see something, but you'll never really see a store-bought product that hasn't been altered or tweaked to better fit our design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically it goes up to this point where, we art direct all the disciplines that come in. They usually have 2 to 3 weeks each, props, lighting, effects, and they get to a point where we call it the red line, where his red line yesterday, mine red line a couple of weeks ago, but that doesn't really stop it, the process.
It's more like an optimistic date where they hope everything's going, but then they use that as okay, this is where we really need to refocus, and this is if anything, they want to be. It's supposed to be, we did it, guys, but it's more like, okay, this is really where we're at. And if something is like a glaring, oh my gosh, like they know that's a place to, but yeah, there's still little bits and tweaks. They're still working on the technical end of mine now. So
Mine.
Yeah, we'll get, but gosh darn it, we'll get there.
And they have to put up all the other mazes as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge process, and that shouldn't be overlooked, because it's an amazing team out there.
Well, and you did share a little bit of the story of your inspiration for the 2 mazes that we have today, but in the past, or what are some other inspirations that you've had, or some things that have really, sparked that?
It's funny for me. Like I said before, I think I'm weird in that I don't have any crazy phobias so much. I just, something will startle me or get me out of, but I don't really have anything that I just see and I'm like, oh, this is horrible. What scares me more than anything is people, because they're the most evil, horrible things on the planet. So really, to me, it's just, how do you take, what is it that you can find and create a creepy, weird, eerie atmosphere? And just, we've had I think it's a understatement that we have very active imaginations. So, but it's really like, how do you could take just about anything, anywhere, and make a really messed up maze about it. Like, you could have grocery store maze and we could turn it into the most hideous thing ever. So it's really just finding, for me, it's like, what's the story? What's the hook? What do I want to tell? What is it that drives me to do this? Because when we commit it to paper and we put it out there, if somebody looks at it and goes, that's the one, we've got to believe in that thing.
Yeah.
Because now we've got a year that we're married to it and we've got to see it through.
And once you have this job, you see almost everything through the lens of, hey, would that make a good maze?
Yeah.
Or hey, would that make a good haunt? So even the most banal thing would be really like, oh, that would be good.
And it's funny. The downside of that, which I've learned in the past too, it's just I've had mazes that are more like people are the enemies, like people I think. But when the talent is people and they're kind of tired, it's a guy, right? So there's always like, how do you make it a monster, right? Because no matter what, you got a tired monster and they got an imposing profile. Like you walk around the like, oh, you walk around, oh hey guy, how's it going? That's not quite.
And for me, as weird as it seems, I get a lot of inspiration from nightmares. So I don't have a lot, but every once in a while I'll get up in the middle of the night and just write it all down. Oh my gosh, what was that? I mean, completely irrational. But usually there's something in there that I can dig from. I'm always in search of something. As a horror junkie, I'm always in search for something that is completely messed up for me. So I want to be scared. Part of the spiders thing is it's a phobia of mine. So it's sort of cathartic to go and design this thing and walk through it every day and, see these giant, massive spiders eating these patients. And I'm like, now I'm kind of numb to it.
Yeah, you get there. It's funny. People were asking me like, oh, what's your favorite room in the maze? And I was thinking like, well, when I was designing it, this one that they built first was like my favorite, but now I've seen it. So because it was like the first one built, I'm like, oh, that's last year. That seems like so long ago. Yeah, you do kind of get, it is a way to sort of get over it because we're stuck dealing with it so long that you kind of become friends with it. Whatever it is you're afraid of, you're just like, yeah, the goal is really always what would be really creepy. You want somebody to turn a corner and go, oh, like that. Just we want them to have that reaction because when you're walking through, our job is to create these atmospheres where people get lost in, right? Because ultimately, you're about to walk 7 minutes through a place with a bunch of people wearing rubber masks on Ooga Booga, right? That's the bottom line. But we want to take you out of that so that you forget all that. So we try to create this world that as you walk into it, you get the music, you get the sights, you get the lighting, everything so that you're transported there. And that's really in the last 10 years or so, Knott has done we've done such a great job in taking that just transformative aspect of these environments to feel like it's not just walking through a hallway that has a thing happen. It's just you're in this place. So if we can create these environments with all these horrible things on it and we lose you in this moment, that's when we can really get you. We can really just have that talent come.
It's about the storytelling too.
Yeah.
It's just about, that's maybe what differentiates us. We try to tell a complete story and we try to make every prop tell that story. Mm-hmm. And anytime you go through, then it will be kind of unique to that character too. So we tell each of the characters that backstory. And that actually does translate. I know I'm a realist. I know 75, maybe 90% of the people who come through just want someone in the corner screaming at them and jumping out. But there's a good 10, 15, 20% that want to see the atmosphere. I love when people walk out, go home, and go, what did I walk? What was that thing that was, what was that about? And I think that's when we've done our job.
We're those people that we're like, can we take a little longer?
Yeah,
go faster.
You want to slow down the line. That's okay. It's to his point there. When I'm creating these things, and this is something I told people before, it's really how do you tell a story in 13 rooms? So it's really 13 chapters of the story. Like you want to see that progression so that when you go through, you're always like, here we are at the start of the thing. And then it's just like, what the hell? We're dead at the end of it, right? So it's how do you find out what your story is and then help progress it? Everything pushes it further along until the finale. So it's just you have to approach it like that. Well, I guess you don't have to, but I have to approach it like that. And I think that's just shows because you feel, especially for our pass holders, the guys that go through and again, you start to see, oh, this thing early echoes this thing later, stuff like that.
Yeah. You've almost made a little interactive horror play, everything, but a ton of them.
That's really the idea. It's just, we treat them in a sense like we respect the story like you would respect a movie, or it is it's our big sort of dollhouse, and we're placing these things, and we're taking you on this journey through it.
How do you keep legacy mazes? Is that what you call like from the previous year? Or I don't know if there's a better term for it.
I've heard the term legacy maze, like
now we're going to have a legit legacy maze this
Or
year.
I guess, what do you, from the mazes that you carry over from the previous year, how do you keep them fresh for people coming back? And then what goes into the decision when you're like, it's time to retire them?
Time. Usually for retirement, it is time, and if people like it or not. We do surveys at the end, and if it's just not a popular theme, then, well, usually, okay, let's move on. So it is somewhat of a mystery even to us. Sometimes they decide, and we kind of scratch our heads and going, oh, that's a little...
Yeah, generally.
But mostly it's just time.
It's really, we have the luxury of with some of our backstage venues that we're able to build it. And, we built it in a way that the fire code allows us to just shut it up. And so the wear and tear on those aren't quite as bad. Some of the ones that are more of the in-park things, like we have Origins and things that require a rebuild every year, there's an absolute toll on the, just you can't keep taking something apart and put it back together and have it be pristine. So there's all of these things, like he said, there's time, there's that shelf life where you have to make that decision. Is the time to go? So we usually do 2 to 3 new mazes a year. Last year we did 3 because it was the 50th and we had a big push, but it's generally so there is that factor of, okay, what are the oldest mazes here? They do make exceptions sometimes if something is extremely popular. Paranormal had a very long run.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's my favorite.
Then, Trick or Treat had a very long run, and in going back to more vampire mazes and the Asylum, we do have mazes that have that just guests can't get rid of. They can't get enough, and they still score so high that they stay around. So yeah, it's time. It's metrics done in surveys and things like that, and it's just sometimes an idea comes along that's just too good for that particular venue, and sometimes it means the thing that's there, maybe it loses a year of its life because some idea came along that they just wanted to get out there.
And to answer the first part of the question, I'm a little different than most. I really want to pour my blood and guts into the first year, make it as complete a story as possible. I usually don't like to revisit and re-up a maze, but every once in a while it's necessary. Maybe a room, like in Cornstalkers, they just couldn't buy all that corn. It just, like, it was in California for some reason, it wasn't feasible. So I changed it into like a rat room, for the last year of the Pumpkin Eater. Things like that. We do sometimes like to market that in plus-up mazes, every once in a while. For me, I think, though, most of the time the guests don't even notice it, but because the push is the major theme of the main.
And usually though you may see some elements for the second year that were wish listed for the first year and didn't happen, but they were far enough along the pipeline that just resources or whatever. So sometimes for second year, and you even see a little bit of that, like we're able to get some of the things into Cinema Slasher this year.
Like Cinema Slasher now.
Chilling Chambers there's even Room 13. All 3 of last year's new mazes do have a little bit extra this year, but usually, we're so crazy ambitious with what we're designing for the new mazes that it just sort of, they're very demanding children, so they need a lot to grow.
The Cinema Slasher thing there was on the marquee, there's a big slasher that they just put it up. So it's actually...
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and in Chilling Chambers this year, because Chilling Chambers is sort of the repository of all the mazes of Knott's history, I was able to get new tombstones for Dark Entities and the Depths, which were retired last year.
Those are both
we were
great.
able to... So we put... and the nature of Chilling Chambers in itself, it's just, I think, as long as that maze is a staple of Scary Farm, when a maze goes away, I'll probably be looking at, I can take that so that's what that maze is about, Knott's history living on. So we got to think about what I'm going to add to that next year.
Is there one particular maze that you really close, near and dear to your heart that you kind of want, should we bring back?
I had so much fun doing Trapped. The third year of Trapped was really... The first couple years I didn't work on so much. The third year of Trapped, I designed all of the rooms. I did the scenic design. I worked with Jeff Tucker to come up with some of the story. I designed all of the puzzles, and it's such a unique experience. And I know that there's logistics of Trapped as an experience that we can't really do it without thinking about the way that above my pay grade type decisions to be made there. But I would love another crack at it. I would love another crack at an experience like Trapped. Yeah.
So do you know what Trapped is?
Mhm.
Okay. So the VIP, that's why. For me, I have so many babies. Well, that's my theory with horror films is if it was not great, I would love to see a sequel. I hate when people do sequels of movies that are just classics or great.
Yeah.
And I just don't appreciate that they try to redo it. That said, I wouldn't want to take a bad maze and redo it. Yeah, that'd be bad. Asylum was one of my favorites, especially because the talent could just cut loose and just be whatever they could be. You know, it's the same kind of genre as Clowns. And we just kind of also got to the theming where it wasn't even appreciated or appropriate to do for Asylum. So it was definitely a favorite. It was all based off this movie called Plan 9, something like that. Not Plan 9 from the
No.
place.
Session
Session
9.
nine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're like,
That makes more sense.
That was just a creepy old asylum
Yeah.
where the patients were sort of still kind of stuck in the walls. It was a disturbing little story that I loved.
if I had a choice, I'd have you redo Hatchet High. Do a new Hatchet High.
That was the same year.
Hatchet High, go to college. Yeah, I know.
I like telling the story because it was Asylum and Hatchet High was the same year, and one was deadly serious, and the other one was kind of tongue in cheek about an asteroid that hit high school. And everyone knows high school, so it's great. So everyone kind of knows all the tropes that go into the high school genre. There's so many horror films based in high schools that it was great. I knew that Asylum was going to be great. I almost immediately after I designed it kind of abandoned it and just said, hey, I want Hatchet High to be great. So I went to the mat to get Hatchet High as good as it can be. And he was in it.
I was in it for its third year, but I did do decor for it the first year.
Yeah. So
that was,
were you like in a thug or something?
Oh, it was a hall monitor.
You were in,
I was a hall monitor. And then on Halloween, I did prom queen.
Oh,
nice.
fun.
So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were very flirty until they got close.
Aw.
And I changed the tune. But yeah, I really wanted to touch on something he said there, and we talked about just the themes earlier, because like you said, high school, everybody knows high school, but just going back to the design of it, when we're coming up with something, finding something that everybody already immediately understands and relates to, like high school or hospital or this, that's half the battle. Because if you have this crazy idea that you have to explain, no, seriously, we're on this other planet and everybody walks upside down. If you have to have half of it be this, find that theme that everybody, where's your grounded, and then bring that horror and just slam it on top of it, because it's so much easier to say, oh, I can see this happening to me, as opposed to, what the heck?
There's so much emphasis on making Knott's a really immersive experience, from mazes like Special Ops Infected, where you're basically playing laser tag, to Trick or Treat with the flashlights, and now these interactive lanterns.
Yes.
How do you come up with these ideas, and more so, what are the challenges of making them happen?
He'll cover most of this, but because he's really into the interactive stuff. I will say that there was a point when we had a leader, his name was Ken Parks. He almost was like, okay, I like the fact that you're giving us a creative concept for a maze, but can we push the industry? Can we actually make it like another thing where we are the leaders of this industry and we are creating something as interactive, or that will be changing how mazes progress from now on, even in small ways or large ways. I think the lanterns and the lights are large ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually last year with the interactive lantern, I was sort of the point person for all the design on that. Me and Winston, our lighting designer, he did the implementation of it. But I worked with all of the designers on the mazes and said, hey, what do you want? Where do you want it? And what do you want it to do? So I drove that and I was sort of liaison with our merchandise partners to get all of that going. Yeah, so with the lanterns, it really is, and we do have a 2.0 lantern coming this year. It's got a spider on it, so I mean, spooky, themed deer maze. I wanted them, especially, well, I want them to be something that adds to the experience of going here, but it's not just the only thing you're doing in a sense. Like there's my opinion, the best way to use technology is to enhance the effect, not be like, hey, look, I've got something here, but more, oh, I'm exploring and this is helping me get more out of the world I'm in. So sometimes I get a little, I think there's a future where there's some sort of AR aspect of what we do, but I also don't want people looking through a screen. I want people to, that's what's great about the lantern is you were there. And, so as you go through the scare zones, it should, certain areas, it'll change color to be in tune with the scare zones. Every maze, when you go in, it'll have its own unique color, or it'll be like, when you go in, it turns to green, and then this room, it'll turn to red. So the goal for me was with the lanterns to not turn our mazes into a hide and seek or like a seek and find kind of event, because I don't want people looking for things to trigger, because the lanterns do trigger elements out in the entire park.
That's so
cool. There's, and it's all proximity sensor, this, that, but the lanterns will trigger activations, and Park Decor, Jeff Shattuck and his team, Mason, those guys, they've done some incredible stuff out in the park that are triggered by those. And that's the perfect place for that kind of thing. For the mazes, I wanted it to be more subtle, so that instead of them trying to find something to trigger, which is ultimately going to take away from the experience because you're trying to play the maze like a game, and then you clobber a talent in the face because he's trying to come around a corner, then it's more like, okay, how do we turn a lantern into a lighting instrument there for you? So there'll be moments where it'll pulse like a heartbeat, or it'll do these things. And there are a couple small things in my new maze that, because I worked so much on the lanterns, that I do have a couple moments where some things will the lights will chase as you go through the lantern with the lantern.
That's
so there
really
are some
cool.
things there, but it's really just my maze very much in the sense of it is sort of a different way of looking at things. And it's kind of like you're walking into it, but we've got projections, we've got tons of fog, obviously tons of light, we've got the lantern things. I wanted to use all of that in ways that reinforce and tell the story and don't become, hey, look at this gizmo doing this thing as I go through. So how we find out about it, it's all out there. Some people come to us, some things we find out about. It's just, we look at all of it and we just think, how do we make this work with what we're doing? And, can we, if not, I don't want to say can we afford it, but is it something that's feasible for this? Or does that trying to implement this one thing come at the expense of so many other things? It's always about finding the right way to make the event better and not make something be a bigger star than any part of the event.
Yeah.
So has there ever been, as you're a huge horror fan, and has there ever been a movie, horror or not, that you wish you could design a maze for?
He actually has done a couple movies.
Yeah,
The Grudge.
The Grudge, and Hellraiser to me is kind of something kind of
That'd
fun.
be so cool.
I love to do Cthulhu-esque type of things, or body horror, Cronenberg stuff that I would love to see. They're very dark though, and a bit extreme. So I'm not sure how much I can get to that. I mean, Waxworks has a little bit of body horror in it, and
It's beautiful though. It's almost like sculptures.
I think there's an aspect to it that, because we do create and we don't do IP, it's all us, but we're so influenced by these things that there's so many elements of just the way the monsters work in so many movies that I like, that I've translated into what these things are, that I've sort of in some ways scratched that itch by making that type of monster or getting that vibe in a sense. So you're not left with this, oh man, I'd love to do that. It's, well, I did it in my own way, in my own story. And yeah, I mean, what would I like to do a maze on? Gosh. If I could do just the weirdest thing ever that no one would appreciate, I'd probably do a Twin Peaks maze.
It'd be amazing.
And it would be like, but it would be like the Bananas Lynch stuff. It wouldn't just be the coffee shop. It would be like the weirdest stuff.
The Dark Lodge? What was that called?
The Dark Lodge.
Black Lodge.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that would be so much fun for me. And then they'd be like, what did you do?
I would die. That would be
So we
amazing.
usually try to find a way of doing something like that, like a delirium
Yeah.
or a nightmares maze, where it's, okay, anything can go.
Yeah.
Do that.
And you go through the things we create, and there's so many of those vibes. So like I said, but like we don't get to do the thing, but we're influenced by the thing, and we're creating our own version of the thing, which is in some way a lot more satisfying.
Yeah, for sure.
The other, it's a bit of a forbidden fruit here is, I mean, I'm a huge fan of The Exorcist, and that freaks me out to no end. And just to do that pseudo-religious thing, but we're a company, and a lot of times they frown them on that, so I have to at least do it in a different form, ancient gods or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so this is such a personal question because the Forsaken Lake Scare Zone is, particularly the funeral procession part of it, is my absolute favorite thing of all the Halloween things ever. I know this is something that you came up with in like around 2018, right?
Oh, I don't
But
was that early in 2018? I thought it was a little earlier. But John Cook was the one who really conceived it. I co-designed it with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, how? I mean, it's so cool.
Yeah.
How did you come up with it? How did you get this
him and I
atmosphere under a roller coaster?
Yeah. Him and I are both huge fans of John Carpenter and The Fog, and that whole sense of this New Orleans town where the tide comes up, and also what is that Stephen King creep show where there's this great something to tide you over.
Yeah.
Where like the creatures are all kind of waterlogged. So I think that was a lot of the inspiration that went into this, along with the New Orleans aspect of it. There's this kind of this creepy moonlit scare zone that's all just not underwater, but swampy crypts. Well, it was definitely a feel to it. And of course, that led to, okay, how can we reestablish the story? How do we do a processional? That would make this unique. And at the time, Ken Parks, brilliant director of entertainment, he wanted to do very creative ways of maybe keep it secret. So no one knew that there was a processional.
Yeah,
so it just happens.
And
then it just startled everyone. And everyone, at first, there was a lot of people who were mad. I wanted to see that. Why wasn't it announced? I was like, that's the whole point. Yeah. It's the fact that you have to discover it.
Shock and delight.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful theme park concept of a guest's discovery, so much more important than them just finding it on the map and going to it, and it's organized. And that's more logical, but you're just stumbling upon it. It's just
and that was my experience. And I think maybe that's why I love it so much. I remember last year, immediately going to find someone who works here and be like, what time is it at? Yeah. Where are you guys still doing it?
I know in all of our newer time or scare zones, we kind of incorporate that. The Roaring Twenties has this great cyclical notion where there's a music that plays and then all of them die.
Yeah. They just relive the moment.
Yeah. It actually was one of the first concepts in Forsaken Lake, where there was tide. It was like a high tide and a low tide, and you'd hear this bell toll, and then the foggers were all supposed to go off at the same time.
There's this really cool thing we didn't do.
I think, but you also want to give the freedom to the monsters too. So they, maybe too much of that is too much. So they do a lot of character building. I mean, on all the street zones, they bring in their own creative forces, and that's actually is another bit of the secret sauce of Not Scary Farm, is that we give that freedom on the streets, and there's a lot of creative people out there, and they are so impassioned with what they do because they feel like they've created this, and this is their bit of horror.
I do try to do a similar thing when I try to train talent, because I know most of the people, even in the mazes, we're not really getting actors. We're getting guys that, just love to come and scare. So I try to see if I can get them to connect with what version of you lives here. So put yourself in this space, find the you that's here, and then bring me that worst version of you, right? Because they're not actors, really. If you're in this apocalypse or whatever, think of you being in this space. How would you react? Like, how do you bring that to life? If you're on this ship and you were you're the engineer of this ship, and then these aliens came in and they killed everyone, and now you're still the engineer, but you're this weird mutated version of you. What are you? How do you react? Find the you, because when I was a performer, I studied improv and things like that. So I found my own way to be me, the version of me in the space, but also a performative version. And because we're not actors so much here, I can't say they're, generally speaking, there's some really talented people, of course, but I try to get them to find the you that exists here, ground yourself in that you, so that when you're not always performing, at least you're feeling that vibe. And I think that's just a way of giving more of that ownership. If you're in your room and you're tired, in your maze and you're tired, you're not just tired, you're still in there.
Yeah.
Because it's possible to be an imposing presence in the space as opposed to a guy standing there.
It's an important concept. We call it idle action as well, where an actor will be wandering around. And most mazes, they'll go, they just walk backwards and hide again. But that's not, that's not being a monster. That's not thinking about what that character is. So we come up with idle actions. What are they doing when no one's there? Are they just constantly fiddling with the bees and waxworks? Yeah. Are they tending to them all the time?
You're a shop
and then you are intruding their space.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's why, we try to imbue that with all of the talent. And I think that gives us a little bit of an edge. It's a lot of work, and we have a very talented directing team that goes through and tries to teach that. But I think it actually shows in the end. So you're not supposed to see them resetting. You're supposed to see them, always being in a character.
Right. I mean, if you're relaxing in your room and you yell at somebody because they just left the door open, or you don't go back to, you don't even, you're still in your room, right? That's kind of the vibe. You've got to be, you're in this space, and then you go back to being in the space. It's just, that's kind of how we hope that they perform.
It prevents them from breaking character.
Because there's nothing worse than a guy and then he slaps you lose the shoulders and you're like, are you going to go to Benny's later? There's nothing worse than that.
Is it my 10? Well, when it comes to your monster, your creatures, your scares, there's a lot of the collaboration that you talked about between your different departments, your effects, your makeup, your costumes. Can you go in a little more of, these are your creatures and they are the light, or that's bringing them to life as well? Can you go into a little more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we write basically what we'll do. I can speak to my experience. All of these characters are very fleshed out in our head. This is the world they live in. This is what they do. This is all of this. So we'll write what they are, give them a description, and then we will meet with them at their scare school, go over their characters so that they understand the world. And then we kind of just present them to our great team that runs the event. So we have, each venue has its own supervisor that oversees the way the talent interacts. And, we're there. I'm not here on a night-to-night basis because we're already working on what's next. But that doesn't mean we don't check in. So we'll check in and, make sure things are going. And if not, we'll give notes to the appropriate people. But yeah, we prep them as best as we can. We write all of the information they have. They have the maze story. They have their character history. They have all of this stuff. And we present it to them. We meet with them. We talk over, answer any questions. And then we hand it off to the teams that run it. And, wardrobe does their part, and we work with them, and they do a great job with, costuming and makeup. And yeah.
For the first part, the writing, I remember during COVID, I was working on my Mesmer maze, and it started with Asylum, where I really wanted each of the characters to have individual backstories. But Mesmer, I went crazy. It was COVID. So I literally wrote like a page, maybe 2 pages of backstory, single-spaced, of each of the characters and how they met Mesmer and how they were.
They're all so unique, though.
Those are really interesting backstories. So each of the posters kind of led into what those backstories are. And they all, like Spidora, Spider Boy, he was a regurgitator and he was challenged to swallow on stage anything. So he said, this one guy goes, "Hey, how about this big spider egg?" And he swallows the spider, it bursts into his stomach, and then he's just covered in these spider welts and he dies. But Mesmer hypnotizes him, and basically he's sort of a zombie in the maze. Is all this backstory. Do I intend everyone to know that when they walk through? No. I know that that's a bit much, but I still think it tells the character what it is, and hopefully it will translate to a certain aspect.
We write so much more than anyone will ever see.
Yeah.
But it's good because it's for us, but it's also for that when people ask questions or if a performer asks questions, the more that you know way more about your life than you're ever going to tell me in this podcast, right? You're probably not going to tell me anything, but that all informs the person you are, right? And how you interact. So that's what we want them to know. We want them to know what this is, know who you are, know what it is, so that when you are, if that's in the back of your head, oh, yeah, no, I'm this person in this place, and I swallowed the thing, and the spiders came out.
From that,
Of course.
the backstories, we would create character sheets where we basically either draw or do a bunch of research, and that will go over to costuming, and then they will create the costumes from that look. So either guidance from us, but sometimes we like to let them go on their own. Sometimes they don't want to see any of that. They want to do it themselves, which is perfectly great. I mean, this is a collaborative field. I want to see them come to us with as much creativity as possible, because that's really what's going. I mean, I haven't really even seen the spider costumes yet fully. So I'm kind of anxious tonight to see that.
I'll be peeking out the door and looking at him.
Again, that said, we want the actors to come in and bring their own thing to it.
And that's sort of where I go. If it's a specific thing like his, oh my gosh, Mesmer, they're all so unique and so crazy. I try to keep it, if it's not a specific, hyper-specific character, like if you're just townsfolk, I'll just sort of come up with, this is the general scenario, this is what's happening, who are you and what are you doing here? How are you reacting? So, it's all this weird combination, and that's how we empower them to bring that aspect to it, to make it better.
So we know that both of you got your starts as scare actors. Do you ever sneak in your mazes and do a night here or there?
Once in a while. I did. I think I do more than you did.
Yeah, around 5-6 years ago, I was a rainy night and I went out and I unfortunately did the splits. And it's completely on accident because it was like, and my lower back went, and I had to have a heat pad for like around the 6 months, not 6, a couple of months. Here and there, sometimes. Like I would love to be a grandmother. I would.
We should do it.
We should. Yeah. I was a cast lead at one point, which was the people in charge of the maze, and I would constantly be dressing up because most time someone would call out, and I'll go, "Oh, I'll do that." Everyone in there. Tooth Fairy, I love doing Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't do any last year. It really depends on if I have the time, because we're so busy. It is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. And there's also a lot of, you have to let everybody know, and hey, I'm going to be doing this here, because, they see somebody, like the one guy that didn't get the memo was like, there's a weird random person. I did have that happen to me when I worked as a talent. I did a night in Carnival. And people were like, who are you and what are you doing here? I'm like, no, for real, I'm me. And they're like, nobody told me. I'm like, good grief. But yes, it is fun. I do like to do it. But being in the position I'm in now, it's so nice to do it for a couple hours and be like, well, that was great. See you later.
It's a lot of hard work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah, I worked hard. I had a lot of high energy when I was a monster, and I could not do that again.
One night only kind of a thing.
Yeah, one night only.
For an hour.
Special appearance until he gets tired and he needs a soda. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for those monster makers and nightmare creators that want to do what you two do?
For me, I think I've already said several times, tell the story. Tell your story and make that story be the core of what guides you throughout the process. So the story should, tell you how the buildings look, how the props look, how the monsters are. And if you stick to that, then you're solid.
Yeah, and I think even and that just goes for like your home haunt setup, right? If somebody's just doing this simple thing, if it all works together, you know, if it all feels like it's telling something together, it just if you're going for a theme, just stick to the theme and you're already halfway there. But if you really want to keep doing this, I mean, go learn theater, right? Learn the basics. Be prepared to make all of the mistakes in the world, and don't get upset that you made the mistakes. Learn from them. It's really just be open to collaboration. None of us have all the answers. Like even what we do, like we're bouncing ideas off each other all the time. It's like, hey, does this work? We're collaborate, find like-minded people who do what you do, and don't be afraid to share and grow the experience, and just have fun.
This is the best. This is not a job.
This is so much fun. I mean, This is the best season. We get to do the coolest decor. We're so lucky that like I said, we get to create these massive houses, and we get to put the dolls where we want them. And the dolls are real people, and they're scaring people because of our crazy stuff. We're so lucky, but it's never taken for granted. You know, it's just such a blessing that we are able to do this, and you know, just put your heart into it, have fun with it. Always be open to learning. You know, you never know everything. I still try to learn something new all the time.
Not to put down on it, but the one thing is also you'll always have a vision, and it'll never be what you envision. The reality of it. Just kind of accept that and go with the flow.
Okay.
Because sometimes it actually is better than your original vision.
Yeah.
I mean, Waxworks is a perfect example. I can show you the maquette of Waxworks, and I think letting the sculptor go on their own was far better than actually him following my maquette to the T. So these things will surprise you. This is actually what makes you excited, is that the fact that this collaboration's coming together of all these ideas is going to give you something superior.
Yeah, and find a way to solve it. Whatever it is, find a way to solve it. There's nothing that's going to sink the ship. It's always just going to be what's the board that repairs it and gets you forward.
What new frights can Scary Farm attendees expect this year beyond the mazes that you just built? Is there new scare zone attractions or anything like that?
I think the Gauntlet is getting some cool new decor this year.
Yeah.
There are some new characters out in Carnival trying to look at what that palette is, and so the clowns are evolving a little bit. That's kind of fun out there. But yeah, I mean, more of what you come to expect when you visit, and just brand new year of fun.
I mean,
And scares.
this obviously she is a huge fan. I don't know if you were able to tell from her talk today.
You're like, I think it's terrible, but she's a great big.
I've actually never been.
Oh,
This is going to be my first year.
Okay.
But we did go to the opening and
The announcement.
the announcement fest, and going into this with, you know, knowing, okay, it's scary, Elvira, and I've always wanted to go, so I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Mhm.
But being in the crowd when you were doing the announcement videos, that, you know, we got to see, you know, the concept art, which was stunning, a little performance, and having, you know, a very, very hyped crowd, but just being around that and hearing the audience, this is my favorite thing ever. I love, I'm so glad they bring this back. I hope they bring this back. I've never heard that level of just sheer joy with any other haunted attraction. And that's something that you know, you've created an atmosphere, a legacy, as you know, as you call it, but also that it is, if people are coming here, I mean, like, people literally screaming with a, yes, he's here, with that slasher appear on the screen. And I mean, this isn't even a question. This is just something to say that that's really magical. I'm so excited to go because I want that feeling. I want that for next year. But you've created something really, really special.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah, it's tough to not, you know, get a little emotional. You got to hide it though. You got to be cool. But yeah, it's tough. It's very satisfying to be in there and hear that applause and all that stuff. It's not a bad feeling.
One of the reasons why we do it. We do it for the fans. You know.
Yeah,
So we are fans.
We are fans. I go all over the place. Like, I couldn't imagine I love this place. I love getting it started. I love creating all these nightmares and getting them going and checking in on it. And I love seeing what everybody else does because I'm just such a fan of it. I try to hit as many other things as I can during the year. And it's not even so much as, oh, we can do that better. It's just, I love the vibe of it. There's so much fun. I love going to see all the worlds that everybody creates.
Although we tend to be very analytical when we go. It's not very fun to go with us to.
Yeah,
how do we do that texture on the wall right there? Oh, I think that's just cement. I mean, my wife hated it when I was there. So, oh, you're just staring again at the walls.
Walls got cool stuff.
But yeah, I do love opening night. It's really watching people come out of your maze and seeing their reactions. It's great.
So I didn't know you did it too, because I do it all the time. The first night, going out to your probably like I'll be out at the exit of windows,
just watching
and just kind of seeing how people leave the maze and talking about it. And it's sort of a thrill to,
and even like
especially strangers, people you don't know,
right?
And they get it. They got the story, and they got all the scares, and yeah, it's a bit of a very special moment.
It can certainly turn a rough night around. That's for sure.
Yeah, for Asylum, the very first year, it was a little startling because I did it for a couple of years and I would get good reactions. But for that one, people were quiet and people were like, somber. And I was like, what is happening? And later I found out that they were, because it was the first time that they really saw a maze like that, they were kind of stunned by it. So, I mean, because I got great reviews of it. And I was like, oh, okay. So
they were amazed at how good the talent was that year.
Yeah. You're in all my mazes. What the heck?
I know. I jumped maze to maze. I did Nightmares, and then I did Malice in Wonderland, and then I did Blood Bayou.
Not mine.
But then I did Asylum, and my last year at a maze was Hatchet High.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We are very excited to be seeing you in the fog.
Yep. Are you going to be there first night?
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Excellent.
We sure are. Knott Scary Farm is open September 19th through November 2nd in Buena Park, California. Come check out Gus and Daniel's Nightmares if you dare.
We will be attending the opening night events, and we have all kinds of fun coverage for you. So keep your eyes peeled for the latest Scary Farm content. And until next time, sweet screams, everyone.
And whatever you do, don't fall asleep first.